Sup YouTube, welcome back or welcome in to game number 2 in our Final Fantasy full series playthrough. Final Fantasy 2. I was supposed to play Stranger of Paradise after FF1, but unfortunately I wasn't able to stream the PC port of it. So that's gonna have to be on the back burner until a later date when I can get it on PS5 or upgrade my PC. If you want a small primer for this full series playthrough, check out my FF1 video, link will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. Make sure to leave a like as that tells YouTube to recommend my content to more people, and subscribe if you want to follow along on this journey through the Final Fantasy franchise. Alright, let's get into my recap / review of Final Fantasy 2. Once again, we start by naming a party of 4 characters. This time we don't get to select any classes though. We open with a more detailed cutscene than the vague landscape pan from Final Fantasy 1. An emperor bent on world domination attacks a peaceful kingdom and a rebel army rises to meet them. Sounds vaguely familiar. Our party of 4 are youths from this peaceful kingdom whose parents are slain and are on the run. We're beset upon by 4 Black Knights. This is an unwinnable fight, so of course we go down immediately. Cut to a stone room where the party leader is revived by Minwu and Hilda, 2 NPCs who will play significant roles throughout this game. We walk out of the healing room and find out our 4th party member, Dragondai, wasn't recovered with us. I'm sure it's only temporary and we'll definitely get him back soonish. Right? Right? We ask to join the rebel army and the princess straight up says no. Apparently these young people, who look as much like adults as people in pixel form can, are too young to join up and fight this oppressive regime. Hilda gives us the rebel password and says we can hang out in Altair since our homes were destroyed though. So this game operates with a keyword system. Whenever you see a new term in red, you have to select Learn from the menu, then use those terms in conversations to get hints for where to go next or progress the story. In concept, this is kinda neat, but in practice it felt a bit clunky. I got stuck several times just because I forgot to hit learn in a specific spot, so I did way more just wandering around aimlessly in this game compared to the first one, which, well, I'll have more thoughts on this later. We head back to Fynn in search of Dragondai, with a quick stop in Gatria, a small village between Altair and Fynn. We spend an embarrassing amount of time wandering around Fynn, going in and out of empty buildings until we finally figure out to skirt around the outside edge of the town to reach a bar we were supposed to go to. And when I say embarrassing, I'm talking like an hour of just wandering. We talk to the bartender who says there is a wounded soldier in a secret room. Hoping it's Dragondai, we rush in, loot a few chests first of course, then talk to the soldier, who it turns out is Prince Scott, brother of Gordon, a coward hiding behind a building back in Altair. Scott gives us his ring, assuring it'll be useful in some way. Spoiler, it isn't. Then faceplants right in front of us and disappears. First character death of the game, dang. That probably won't happen several more times, right? Right? We head back to Altair and show the ring to Hilda, which convinces her to let us into the army. Hooray, we did it! We joined the Rebel Alliance, sorry. Immediately Hilda sends us on a mission to find some mithril to improve the army's equipment, but not before I missed the mithril prompt and didn't learn the term, blocking me from progressing at all. We once again wander all over, completely confused. While we're wandering, I'll take this time to go over the leveling system. So first things first, this system change from FF1 to FF2 is an impressive and ambitious swing, although I do think it was a bit of a swing and a miss. The way you level in this game is simply by taking actions. More attacks increases strength, casting magic improves MP and the spell's level, and taking damage increases HP. Simple enough, and a neat concept, but to facilitate this, you do have to do an absolute metric ton of battles, and they really cranked up the encounter rate here. It felt like it was every couple steps for the entire game. To say this became tedious is a gross understatement. It made exploration feel like a punishment as opposed to something you wanted to do, not to mention how wildly unbalanced the basic attacks versus magic ended up being. I spent the entire game trying to level up offensive spells, and they just never did a relevant amount of damage, which felt incredibly bad because of the amount of time I spent grinding these spells. So after a certain point, I just gave up entirely on offensive magic and just used Cure and Berserk to brute force my way through everything. So after a couple laps of the earth, we find our way back to Altair and learn the mithril term finally, which allows us to recruit Minwu, the white mage, to our party temporarily. Minwoo conveniently has a canoe, which we are able to make use of to cross a lake and get to our next destination, the town of Salamand, a cozy little snow-covered village where we meet Joseph, who does know where some mithril is, but won't give it up so easily. He sends us on a mission to our first dungeon, a cave at a waterfall that is somehow not behind the waterfall. We clear out the cave with relative ease, finding our way through empty room after empty room. Remember how I said this game punishes you for exploring? Well, all these empty rooms littered throughout all the dungeons are just another way to waste the player's time and force a few more random encounters onto them. Cool if you just want to grind, but I'm just trying to progress the game after the massive amount of time spent wandering, so these were particularly frustrating. Eventually, we come upon a room with people in it. There we find Paul, who had intended to come in and cut our grass, so to speak, getting the mithril first, but ended up getting captured in the process. He takes the other prisoners and escapes as we delve deeper into the cave. Now that we know this is in fact where the mithril is, we find our way down to a room with a knight, very obviously guarding a chest. We dispatch the sergeant, and there it is, our mithril. We rush the mithril back to Altair and give it to Hilda, who also casually mentions the Empire is building a dreadnought, a flying fortress capable of raining destruction from above. Once again, it sounds vaguely familiar. We take the mithril to the blacksmith, who rewards us by allowing us to buy mithril weapons from him. Mithril weapons that we cannot afford. Hooray! Ah well, I'm sure we'll earn enough from the billion wild encounters ahead of us to kit out in mithril eventually. Our next mission is to journey to Basque to try and delay the completion of the Dreadnought. There is a man on the inside who can allow us into the construction area. He talks some smack about his boss, Borgin, whom nobody seems to like, before we give him the password, and he lets us through to an underground tunnel. We grind our way through the cave system before having our path cut off by the Dark Knight, a sort of right-hand enforcer for the Emperor. Curious. He tells us we're too late as he and Borgin flee aboard the Dreadstar, laying waste to a couple of planets or towns on the way.
Commence primary ignition.
Before leaving ourselves, we find a pass to board the Death Knot. We just need to find out where it is. We return to Poft, one of the destroyed port cities where Sid resides. Sid tells us how to destroy the Dreadnought, just blow up its engines, and also I managed to miss learning the airship term from him. We also stop in at Paloom to survey the destruction, and there are holes in the ground and most of the buildings, but everything seems to still be standing. Seems like it could have been a lot worse, to be honest. Finally, we end up back in Altair, which was also hit by the Dreadstar. Everyone seems to be fine and huddled in the hideout, though. Apparently the shock of the attack has made Hilda's father, the king, has made his health take a turn for the worse, which is surprising because when we asked him about the Dreadnought, he hadn't heard of it. Minwoo leaves the party to care for the king in his last moments. He does allow us to continue using his canoe, though. Real solid dude, that Minwoo. Here is where we needed the airship term from Sid, so cue another lap around the world wondering what to do next. Along the way, we do find ourselves in a chocobo forest, and of course we get to ride one. Let's choco go! Not only is it much faster to get around, we don't get any encounters while atop the chocobo. Also, we get a sweet travel song. Honestly, this rules. We explore a bit while riding the chocobo before getting stuck at a lake. We have to dismount to canoe across and wait a minute, where are you going, Choco friend? Do we really have to go back to that one specific spot on the map only to get a temporary chocobo ride? Oh, Choco, no. Eventually I do find my way back to Poft and Sid after visiting every other town I've been to so far. Finally, with airship etched into our brains, we head back to Altair once more. We learn that the Dreadstar runs on Sunfire, and we can use that in turn to destroy it. The only place to get Sunfire is Kashuan Keep, and we will need a torch to carry the Sunfire, but also a bell to open the door, to get the torch, to carry the Sunfire. So we're off to find a bell. We have to traverse the snowlands north of where Joseph lives. He happens to know those lands well, so we pay Joseph a visit. Joseph says the only way to reach the bell is to travel across the snow with his snowcraft, so Joseph joins the party. And I guess his garage is back in the cave near the waterfall, so we head there. Joseph punches a hole in a wall, and we get the snowcraft. We sail across the snow to another dungeon. To be honest, the dungeons in this game don't do a ton to distinguish themselves from the rest. They're all pretty tedious, filled with empty rooms, and 100 encounters a second. We run through pretty easily until we find a room full of beavers, who are cute, but all they do is direct us to more dungeon. We finally come upon a staple of the Final Fantasy franchise, the Adamantoise, which looks much more intimidating in the overworld compared to it just being a palette-swapped regular enemy in the fight. I decided to try out an item I got in the dungeon that casts a high-level spell just to see how effective it is, and it essentially one-shots the boss. Seems good. Although 500 damage for a level 16 spell is actually pretty low. As I said earlier, the offensive magic in this game is awful. On our way out, we are ambushed by Borgin, the Imperial boss guy that everyone seems to hate. And he proves to be as inept as everyone says. We demolish him in very short order, but with his dying breath he says he'll be waiting for us in hell, and lets loose a boulder in an attempt to crush us. Joseph stops the boulder long enough for us to get out of the way, though he is crushed in the process. That's the second NPC down. RIP Joseph. Bell in hand and Borgin defeated, we head to the Castle Kashuan to get our torch. The footage in this section gets a bit weird. I was using the wrong source while streaming this, so it's a bit zoomed in here. I did get this fixed eventually, but yeah, it's a little bit weird for this next little bit, so apologies for that. We make sure to test if we can just carry the Sunfire in our canoe before making our way into the castle. There we find Gordon, who's no longer cowering behind a building, and joins our party. One weird thing about these temporary party members is they're always so ridiculously behind on the power curve, and I don't think we're really massively overleveled, like maybe a little bit, but they can't seem to compete against the monsters that are immediately in front of us. It's like the game expects you to spend even more time grinding them up to parity. But instead, I just took the Drago approach.
If he dies, he dies.
After making our way through the castle, we get a sort of boss battle. I didn't even recognize this as a boss, as these are a pretty low threat regular enemy once we get even just a little bit further in the game. We crush this red soul and get Eagle's torch. We pick up the Sunfire from the lobby, and then it's off to make our trench run on the Dreadstar. As we leave the castle, we see the Death Knot capture the Millennium Falcon, Sid's airship, in its tractor beam, which happened to be carrying Princess Hilda for some reason. She picked a heck of a time to leave the hideout to come help, and I say help with heavy quotes. I really don't know what she was gonna help with. We don't really have any direction as to where we're going to find the Dreadnought, only the knowledge that it has to dock and resupply sometime. So we take a world lap, eventually hop on a chocobo, and we finally find it, on a very out-of-the-way part of the map, which we have definitely been to before. We may have seen this structure before, but I don't recall if we did. Either way, as is the trend with this game, it took a while, but we do find it eventually. We bust into the Death Star and come upon a guard we are presumably supposed to show the paths we picked up oh so long ago to. But instead I try all the other options first, of course, and accidentally give them the old Wild Rose. So they attack. And it turns out, if you just fight and kill the guard, you can continue, no pass required. We find our way to the cell block and rescue the princess. Now, I mean, most of the Star Wars references I think have been pretty obvious, but at least she doesn't call us short here. We then battle our way to the engine room and of course try casting the ring into the engine, to no avail. We then select Sunfire, that seems to overload it. The Darth Knight comes running in on another platform, panicked. Carol seems to recognize their voice. Wouldn't it be wild if it turned out the Vader-type character was related to one of our party members? Also, remember how we used to have a fourth party member in the first minute and a half of the game? We escape the dreadnought on Sid's airship just in time as it explodes behind us. We're dropped off back at Altair, where we waste no time seeing the king, who gives us a new objective. We have to break the seal to acquire the ultimate magic. Ultima. Magic. But before that, we need to go to Deist, home of the Dragoons. Now, I was sure the king was setting me up for a joke here, but then he just kinda dies right in front of us. R.I.P. King. Gordon says the Emperor feared the Dragoons, that's why he had them wiped out. Some say it was his 66th order as Emperor to have them slain.
Execute Order 66.
Alright. So this game came out before the prequels. That one's just me connecting dots that actually aren't there. Also, Gordon leaves the party to help rule the hideout, leaving us with just 3 party members once again. We encounter a sailor offering passage to Deist. Now hold on, I know for sure this one's a setup. Oh, never mind, she just tries to kill us. Phew. Sorry, my brain is rotted by the internet. Anyhow, we crush a group of pirates and acquire a boat for the second Final Fantasy in a row. Only this time, the captain doesn't quit pirating altogether. She instead joins our party. With our newly acquired ship, we head to a lone island in the middle of the ocean. Assuming that's where Deist is, since we got no real direction. But nope, it's just a cave. Oh well, might as well do some spelunking. We get to the bottom and fight off another group of regular enemies masquerading as a boss. At this point, it dawns on me that there is a very distinct lack of cool bosses in this game. Like, the Adamantoids was kind of neat, just because it's a classic Final Fantasy monster, but other than that, nothing too exciting. And we are several hours in at this point. After crushing the crash of rhinos, we get a mask. Neat. We then make our way to Deist in the top right corner of the map. There we encounter some surviving family members of the Dragoons. There's a large wyvern in a room. I'm not sure how it got in there, as there is only one small door to get in or out. But anyways, we can't understand what it's saying, so we have to delve into the cavern to the north. There we find a pendant, not far in at all, so that's nice. We take it back to the wyvern, whom we can now understand and talk to. We ask for help to take on the Empire, but the poison they use to wipe out the rest of the wyverns is about to take this last survivor as well. The wyvern gives us an egg and asks us to drown it. Weird request, but who am I to argue with this majestic creature's dying request? We do just that, and then I'm not really sure where to go from here. So we do what we seem to always have to do, just return to Altair and hope for direction. We meet the princess in her room, and she's acting a bit weird. She starts putting the moves on Dookie, and I guess it makes sense. We have been doing a lot of heavy lifting in this rebellion, and there have been a few NPC deaths, so time for some romance. Never mind, she's a monster in disguise. Better than finding out she's your sister, I suppose.
It's you, Leia.
Somehow, I've always known.
Huh?
We actually do die in this fight once. The Lamia Queen uses Confuse and Sleep, and it turns out the most powerful things enemies can do to us is make our party either fight itself or completely incapacitate everyone. The second go at her, we just forgo all the setup and attack, and she goes down pretty easy. Also, this is where we finally fix the screen. Shout out to Dragondie for letting me know after almost 2 full streams of nobody noticing or telling me, including myself. Whoops. We learn that the princess has been taken once again by the Empire and is being held captive at an arena just outside the capital. We head there and get another boss fight with an iconic Final Fantasy monster, the FF2's Behemoth. Definitely the coolest looking boss we've taken on so far. We knock it down in short order, as we are probably a bit overpowered at this point. It looks like we're gonna get a crack at the Emperor, but Palps gives us the old switcheroo and Dark Vader throws us in jail. While we rot away in our cell, Paul comes to our rescue. We helped Paul out when looking for the mithril, so he definitely owes us one. Thanks, Paul. On our way out, we rescued Gordon and the princess for the second time. Now that we have the mithril and Gordon is ready to fight, it's time to try and take back Finn. We meet Hilda and Gordon at the rebel camp and plan the attack. The army will go one way and we'll go another, Basically, instead of some kind of interesting encounter, we just go into the castle as if it were another dungeon, with the boss being our target for assassination. We waltz our way into the castle and straight to the throne room, where the Castellan Gaudos is waiting for us. Just a straight-up demon is in charge of the castle, a little on the nose for an evil empire. We start to get set up with protects and haste, and Gaudos just kinda dies. For some reason with these boss battles, I keep bothering to try and set up protects and defensive spells, but none of these bosses have really proved to be a challenge. Hilda is back on the throne with Gordon reigning beside her. Our next objective is to find 2 masks to unseal the tower, which holds the Ultima magic. One of them resides below the castle, and the other we actually already got randomly. We go through a secret passage in the castle wall and find our way to the basement and the second mask. Hilda tells us to take the masks to Mysidia, which is a town full of mages. They should be able to tell me what to do with said masks. We arrive in Mysidia after only a bit of wandering this time and find a town of black mages. I really want to call them VVs because I played FF9 before ever seeing the classic black mage sprites, and that's just what springs to mind every time. We do some research in this town full of VVs and learn in order to obtain the crystal rod needed to unlock Ultima Tower, we have to put a mask on a statue under the town, which will allow us to get past a doppelganger of ourself, which blocks your way further into the dungeon where the rod resides. Once past the doppelganger, we make our way through another honestly forgettable dungeon, although this one had false walls in it, so that's something. We find the crystal rod and get out of there. We set sail towards the Ultima Tower to unlock this mystical tome. As we enter the cove where the tower is located, we get a perspective shift, and a maelstrom opens beneath us. Easily the coolest thing that's happened so far. You can kind of make out some large shadowy tentacles beneath the waves. Unfortunately, we don't get to see directly what swallows us, but we find out it was the Leviathan. Now here's a dungeon that's at least memorable. The battle backdrop is the innards of the Leviathan, with pools of what I can only assume are stomach acid. Kinda gross, but also kinda cool. I guess Leviathan swallows anyone carrying a crystal rod, as there's a small society of people living down here, including a dragoon that managed to survive Order 66. Ricard the Dragoon joins the party as we search for a way out of the beast. We help rid Leviathan of a parasite and conveniently find a fully intact boat, which I guess has a path to just sail out. Not sure why nobody did this before us, but a little anticlimactic, but hey, we have a mission to complete. Once out of the Leviathan's belly, we sail on and arrive at the tower. There's a little animation that plays, and we are in. We climb several levels of tower, which change from biome to biome, with a different colored Giga Chad serving as a boss. Sorry, I got distracted there for a moment. What was I saying? Oh right, we cut down each of these Giga Chads until we reach the top of the tower. There we find our old pal Minwu, who I guess could get in here the entire time and just made us do it ourselves. Honestly, kinda rude. I thought you were cool, Minwu. Minwu gives the door his biggest Kamehameha, so big that it kills him. Dang. Well, thanks for the canoe anyways, Minwu. Rest in peace. We go into the final room of the tower, and there are some orbs just sitting there. One bestows upon us the ultimate magic, Ultima. The other ones just give us a small boost in stats, but to be honest, that's probably more useful than Ultima is gonna be. Remember how I said offensive magic sucks? Well, Ultima isn't really any different. Certainly better than the average offensive spell, but still just not nearly as good as just straight up attacking. We get back to Finn, and there's just a tornado spinning outside the walls. That doesn't seem great. We talk to Hilda, who says the Emperor is controlling the cyclone, and it has destroyed Gatria, Poft, Paloom, and Altair. So you're telling me after destroying the Emperor's first planet-destroying super weapon, he found himself another one? Incredible. Where have I heard that before? The only hint we get for how to get into the cyclone is we would need to sprout wings and fly to get in there. So we do a lap of the world looking for Sid and his airship. We find ourselves in Deist, where Ricard the Dragoon tells a child he'll be back to train him in the ways of the Force. Eventually. Still no lead there, and once again our lap was in vain as the solution was right there in the Castle Finn. We just didn't show the mirror the right item. Eventually we show the mirror our Wyvern pendant, and it hatches the drowned Wyvern egg from much earlier. The young Wyvern flies to our side, well, Ricard's side. I guess the Wyvern is his lightsaber in my Star Wars analogy here. We see the Wyvern fly straight into the cyclone. Then we pop out of the castle. Wait, hold on, aren't we supposed to ride it in? We go check out the cyclone, and then from off-screen the Wyvern returns and swoops us up. That was weird, but I'm not going to question it too much. We then get another sweet Mode 7 cutscene as the cyclone expands and the Wyvern takes us in. We are inside the cyclone, and it's a building. I guess sure, whatever game. We climb the cyclone floor by floor until we reach the cyclone's throne room, and finally confront the Emperor. He makes us fight two groups of royal knights before getting into combat himself. And once we finally get to lay a hit on him, he just dies in a single hit. He screams, "I will not die," but then does just that, as he fades into the Force. Well, that seemed like it might be the last boss of the game, but surely with that underwhelming result, it can't be. Also, when the hell are we going to get our fourth party member from the beginning of the game back? Where is Dragondai? At this point, I'm worried it was a missable event. We go back to Hilda, who thanks and congratulates us, giving each of us a medal. Not Ricard, though. Sorry, bud. Someone has to be the Chewbacca. We get a little dance scene as everyone celebrates, until a soldier runs in and says Darth Dragondai has reorganized the Empire and taken the helm as the new leader, and is still trying to conquer the world. Ah, there's Dragondai. We set out to take down Dragondai and stop the Empire once and for all, but first we find Sid beaten up and on bed rest. I guess he got caught up in the cyclone and got messed up pretty bad, but his airship ended up fine. He says we can borrow the airship, but he says he wants it back, and he's very adamant about that. And then, he dies. So, when I'm done with the airship, where exactly do I return it? Do we just, park it on his grave, or... Oh well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Airship time! There's no fun airship music for this game, though, which is a little bit disappointing. We cruise over to the Palametian capital and start our assault. We once again ascend or descend a building, fighting our way past Palpatine clones until we reach another throne room. There sits Darth Dragondai as the new Emperor. Dragondai is completely taken by his lust for power, but just as we're about to do battle, straight out of hell, the Emperor has returned.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I guess he got more powerful during his time in hell and has come back as Hellpatine. Palpatine is about to destroy everything, but Ricard jumps up and sacrifices himself, and we get the reveal that his full name is Ricard Highwind, which is usually Sid's last name as far as I know, so that's interesting. I'm not sure if the implication is that Sid was also a Dragoon or what. Either way, Ricard, last of the Dragoons, allows us to get away on the Wyvern. I guess he won't be training that kid back at Deist. The castle explodes in a giant beam of energy, which was pretty cool. Then left in its place is what looks like a hell fortress, or maybe it's just rubble. We arrive back at Castle Fin, finally reunited with Dragondai, who has lost his sweet Darth Knight armor. We ask Dragondai politely to help us fight Palpatine, and he says, alright. That's not a bit or anything, that's literally how the interaction goes. We just forget all the time he spent working as a general/enforcer for an evil empire, and he rejoins the party as if we were still in the first minute and a half of the game. I mean, we only have 1, maybe 2 dungeons left, depending how you classify this next section. So we get our 4th party member, which we named, for all of about a half hour total in this game. Like, I guess that's fine, it's just a little silly. Also, for the first time in the game, it shows us where to go next. There's a hole in the ground, which I guess leads to Hell, where the Emperor is waiting for us, so we hop right in. The Jade Passage looks just like the other caves we've explored, so we tear through as fast as possible until we reach a teleporter. This takes us to Pandemonium, the Castle of Hell, and you guessed it, it's the other genre of dungeon in this game, building. Well, to be fair, this one is a bit more stylized, with glass floors and some intricate designs in the architecture. We also get the most interesting bosses as optional fights here, including Tiamat, whom we met in the previous game, who looks awesome here as well. Beelzebub, the Lord of Flies, who's a giant fly himself, who also looks awesome. Zombie Borgin, who, still sucks. And finally Astaroth, a green goblin-looking demon, who actually gets us kinda low until we stack enough berserks to drop them. We reach floor 10 of Pandemonium, the throne room, and confront Palpatine once and for all, and he looks much more impressive than the first time. Palpatine makes the mistake of using extremely weak offensive spells, which barely make a dent, while our Berserk-fueled basic attacks make extremely short work of him. Maybe Berserk is just busted, but yeah, this was a super easy final boss. Palpatine turns into dark matter and implodes. Once again, we celebrate at Castle Fin. This time we know it's the end because all the NPCs we met along the way are here. we get a slow cutscene leading into the credits, which basically just says, "Peace returns to the land, and the monsters have just up and disappeared." But there we go, our second game down, and easily the worst Final Fantasy I've played so far. Pacing in this game was insane. It did pick up towards the end, and Pandemonium was kinda cool, and the optional bosses were neat. I wish they hadn't hid them until the final dungeon. I think this game could have been really cool if you had it as a kid and just a ton of free time on your hands to grind out different spells or weapon types. But in the year 2024, while you have so many options at your fingertips, the amount of time this game wants you to spend is just far too much. The story once again was basically just Star Wars, which I love Star Wars, so that's actually a positive for me. The music, I feel, was a downgrade from FF1. The lack of the airship track, my favorite piece from the first game, was sad, but we did get to ride a chocobo in this one, and that had a version of the classic chocobo music. But all that is to say, it's still a Final Fantasy soundtrack, so the music was at least very enjoyable. Alright, time to add it to the tier list. Alright, time for Final Fantasy II to join Final Fantasy 1 and 16 here. Of course, we have 16 in A tier, because I really love that game. I know a lot of people didn't love it, but yeah, I really liked it. I had issues with it, that's why it's not an S tier. But overall, I thought it was great. Final Fantasy 1, I think, was a more streamlined experience. I think it was more varied as well in like its locations and kind of world. It felt like. So yeah, I think FF2 is definitely a downgrade from FF1. I didn't play the originals. These are of course the pixel remastered, but I'm using the original covers here. I just like them. I don't know. Also, the pixel remasters all kind of look the same on their covers. So yeah, I think we're gonna slot it into C tier here. I don't think it definitely wasn't a 0. There were things that I liked about it. Like I thought the story, like the more comprehensive, like overarching story was kind of cool, and like the fact that it has to be heavily inspired by Star Wars. I think that was cool. Like I said, I love Star Wars, so that's a plus for me. And yeah, I think it was cool that there's actually different characterizations for the different named characters, and the concept of naming the fourth party member and having them be a villain for most of the game was kind of neat. I did enjoy that for the most part. I thought it was kind of silly that we didn't get him back until the end of the game, but overall, I thought that was a cool concept. Again, I think it wasn't a total 0. It definitely was a worse experience than Final Fantasy 1, but we have a lot of titles to get to, so I want to leave some room underneath. It's possible that this changes over time. As we add new titles, of course, potentially new context gets added, or like the farther away I get from titles, like my opinions on them could change. So this is going to be an ever-changing list anyways. But yeah, I'm excited to fill it out. I've been wanting to play all the Final Fantasies for a long time, and yeah, this has been a good opportunity to hold myself accountable to that, making it a sort of content passion project. Our next game is going to be Final Fantasy Tactics, so look out for that. Hopefully, it won't take another 4 months. I was kind of distracted in the middle of editing this one several times, so it took me a while to get here, but we're finally here. It's finally done. Yeah, I just hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, if you watched this far, thank you so much for watching. I super appreciate you. And yeah, I just hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you next time.